Madeline Rivera joins us live from Washington, D.C. So, Maddie, what's this resistance look like this time around?
Well, I think that's part of the problem that Democrats are experiencing right now. They have not been able to unite around one cohesive strategy. So since retaking office, President Trump has moved with lightning speed to reshape the federal government. And Democrats largely share one thing in common. They are angry. But again, they've been struggling with how to effectively push back against this administration. They're reportedly now weighing two approaches ahead of the president's joint address to Congress. Axios reports House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer do want members to attend with a +1. A congressional memo obtained by Axios asks House Democrats attending the joint address bring a guest who has been harmed by the Trump administration's early actions. Party leaders are encouraging members to stay disciplined and focus on kitchen table issues and protecting programs like Medicaid. They're hoping that approach resonates more with voters instead of simply interrupting the president's speech. But there are Democrats who believe not showing up at all sends a better message. Per Axios, Senators Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey, and Martin Heinrich are some of those who are considering not going. Senator Chris Murphy is reportedly also considering not attending, telling Axios when President Trump does the speech, it's not a serious event. Charlie, Rachel, and Peter.
All right, thank you,
Thanks, Maddie.
You got it.
Well, you know, the resistance.
I think part of the reason that Nancy Pelosi doesn't want anybody doing anything dramatic, two reasons. One, because what if somebody comes up with something more iconic than ripping a piece of paper? It's possible. Number two, the Dems don't have a seat. They don't have the good seat behind the president this year.
Oh, right.
And
they
so
can't do the antics.
It's going to be J.D. Vance there on the left and Mike Johnson. So anything that they would be doing, any of these rank and file members, it would just come across as too small.
I really love your profound cynicism about her motives, and I think that no one has ever gone broke in Washington, D.C. For a lack of cynicism. You can't have too much cynicism. I think you're exactly right about it. But the problem with it is, for her, she doesn't want to be outdone. But the problem is that as the protests become more and more ridiculous and futile. This was, what, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that she did the alligator clap?
The alligator clap, it's so, it was so great. Put that back up. It was...
It's better than the baby shark. The baby shark.
The baby shark. Listen, it's going to be an interesting night. As you said, as you pointed out, Charlie, it's not really a State of the Union because it's only 2 weeks in. 1 month in. Yeah. But usually these events... Okay, come on, you guys. I can't get enough of that. I told you earlier... For weeks after when that happened, I was just clapping at everyone like this. I just loved it.
I would take the garbage out and my wife would go.
Good job, Charlie.
Way to go.
However, I would say this is going to be different because in just a month, he actually has wins. He actually can say, I did this. I shut down the border and illegal crossings are down 90%. I cut this many millions from the government. I eliminated this Department of Waste. I got rid of basically USAID and all the warmongering and regime change crap they were doing in that agency. There is a lot going on right now, and he can get up there in just 1 month and say, I've done this. Look, get ready for more.
And the other thing is, if Nancy Pelosi blesses any kind of a Democratic protest ahead of time, that means that she has chosen the successor she thinks is worthy of the Obama, Biden, Pelosi era. And she must be looking at this crop of Democrats right now in the House and thinking, I don't know. I don't know if there is a worthy successor right now.
It is AOC, whether she likes it or not.
So
the leader is AOC.
Should we draw straws to see who gets to actually read the quote from Nancy Pelosi?
Sure, you go for it.
Okay, good.
I'll clap for you after.
Yeah. Okay. She says that she thinks that they should not do any demonstration. She said, any demonstration of disagreement, whether it's visual or whatever, just let him, as in Trump, stew in his own juices.
So
is that a euphemism for?
It's a hot tub of winning juices.
Of winning, yes.
Is that a Diet Coke joke? Trump's juice?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's not a good one if it's
not. No.
So
Yeah, I was just say we had Jason Miller on, and here's what he had to say. He gave kind of a preview of what to expect.
But I think this is more important than ever because not only of what we've seen President Trump do in this first month in office, historic, by the way. You talked about it earlier, the executive order, securing the border, getting rid of things such as DEI and men and women's sports, getting the framework put together for trade deals with countries like Japan and India. But what comes next is so critical, and this is what you touched on, because the country is in a really bad place from where Joe Biden left it, even with all the fantastic accomplishments that, by the way, I think George Washington and all the rest of the presidents would envy, is what President Trump does to finish getting our country back on track. This is going to be a big night. President Trump always steps up on game night on the big stage. That's what I look forward to seeing on Tuesday.
Tuesday is Fat Tuesday. Wednesday is the start of Lent. I think about Jesus saying, "Blessed are the peacemakers." So on that list of wins is also going to be that the Republican Party is now the party of peace, of world peace. I mean, this is really remarkable. This used to be the party of war and the war machine.
I forgot that the speech is on Fat Tuesday. Mr. President, if you're watching and anybody protests, just throw beads at them.
Yeah, good
Just
idea.
beads.
But keep your shirt on.
Yeah, no, of course. It's
Maybe that's what Nancy has up her sleeve. Well, we'll see about that.
MSNBC host Simone Sanders Townsend calling on Democrats to boycott Trump's joint address. Listen.
The former comm strategist in me says Democrats should collectively not attend, including Leader Jeffries. We'll see. I think the Democrats are going, and that's part of the dang on problem. Do not attend. Do not attend. Do not attend.
Once again, Joe, the party of democracy apparently spitting in the face of, wait for it, democracy.
Democracy, yes. The Democrats should absolutely do this. Take cues from MSNBC, where they have more employees than actual viewers at this point. And this is apparently the new MSNBC that fired Joy Reid and basically has Joy Reid 2.0 advising Democrats not to attend the State of the Union, as many will not. Look, the Democratic Party right now, guys, is polling lower than at any time in its history. Just 21%. That's a Quinnipiac poll that came out last week. 21% of Americans approve of the Democratic Party right now. So if you want to play les résistants without actually offering any, solutions, but just loudly complaining, and you're campaigning against, by the way, fraud, waste, and corruption, as Doge is uncovering, good luck, because that's not the way you want to go at this point.
Okay, so, Joe, there's also this. Speaking of Democrats, former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel was on with Bill Maher and had this to say about the state of the city that he once led. Watch.
Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those three things and your city's going to be fine. We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster. Yeah. And our school, and I'll say this about our schools. I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom.
That's the money soundbite there, Joe. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Rahm Emanuel, who left Chicago as mayor at 18% approval. He's getting it right now. He understands that Democrats are not running cities well across the country. And Fareed Zakaria was also on the show. I'll leave it here, guys, real quick. This is a huge Democrat Party problem. Democrat cities are terribly run. Cost of housing is crazy. The budget of New York is twice that of Florida. Lots of taxes, lots of regulation, but nothing gets done. And that's what people see, and that's why this party has a huge branding problem right now. No question.
Rahm Emanuel sounds like a Republican.
I don't want to hear about the bathroom. Focus on the classroom. That's one that'll stick with you.
You know, our producer Anthony said we couldn't get all three topics in, plus the steak.
We did.
Yes. Take that, Anthony.
High five, Toddy.
Thanks, Joe.
Virtual.
The wind don't negotiate. Fire don't negotiate. The climate don't negotiate.
Those are protesters rallying against Elon Musk's firings in the federal workforce as Democrats fume over a lack of response to President Trump's agenda before tomorrow night's address to Congress. An Axios headline reads, "Fuming Democrats struggle with Trump's speech strategy." Democratic strategist and Third Way co-founder Matt Bennett is here. He will weigh in on that momentarily. But first, Mark Meredith is live out of Washington for us. So, Mark, how are Democrats trying to combat the Trump administration?
Sandra, good afternoon to you. Well, Democrats do appear to be split over how best to respond to the president, including tomorrow night's address when he talks to Congress. There are reports nearly a dozen Democratic lawmakers plan to skip the joint address. Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy among those not expected to show up. But others want to use the high-profile moment to highlight what they say are real problems. Politico writing today that some Democrats are bringing guests to highlight the Trump administration's radical overhaul of the federal bureaucracy, including union leaders, laid-off government workers, and others affected by the federal funding freeze. And while some on the left argue it's best not to respond to every controversy coming out of the White House, others argue not responding is even worse.
In fact, the problem is the Democrats have been playing dead for too many years. I don't think you play dead. I think you stand up for the working class of this country and make the point.
Tomorrow night, Michigan's newest senator, Democrat Elissa Slotkin, will deliver the Democratic rebuttal. Democratic leaders calling her a rising star after she won her seat in a state that the president carried last November. And one Democrat already generating buzz for 2028 is former vice presidential nominee Tim Walz. He says he's open to potentially running for the White House again, but this time at the top of the ticket. No final decisions yet, but he's kind of floating it out there. We don't know whether or not Kamala Harris, whether or not she would choose to run again. She did not show up for last night's Academy Awards. There were rumblings she may have shown up there. Instead, her husband posted a photo of her enjoying some Doritos instead. Sandra?
Well, they can be delicious. Mark Meredith, thank you so much. John?
All right, Sandra, for more on this, let's bring in Matt Bennett, former Clinton White House Deputy Special Assistant and the co-founder of Third Way. So the Democrats are trying to figure a way to respond to the president's address to a joint meeting of Congress. They might be well served to consider the results of a new Harvard-Harris poll conducted by Democratic pollster Mark Penn, which found 52% of people approve of Donald Trump, 58% think he's doing a better job than Biden, 81% approve of his deportation of illegal immigrants who've committed crimes, 76% approve of DOJ eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, and 68% approve of his declaring there are only to be two genders, male and female. So Given, and the Democratic approval rating, according to this poll, is 36% compared to 51% for Republicans. So what can Democrats effectively do to try to counter this tomorrow night? It doesn't sound like much.
Right. I think tomorrow night their tools are very limited, and I think that's going to be true for the next 2 years. A lot of attorneys general and others have been suing to stop some of the things that Trump and Musk are doing. But the fact is that Republicans control all three, the big branches of government, House, Senate, and the White House. And that means that Democrats can simply point out the things that they're doing that we think are really damaging regular Americans. I think the clip you just showed of those protests outside of federal buildings are not effective ways of making this case. There are more effective ways, or ways of pointing out that Trump was elected to restore order, and instead what he's bringing is chaos. He's firing kind of arbitrarily veterans and firefighters and people working at the VA and people studying Alzheimer's research. Nobody voted for that. But if they're not very clear about the things that really matter to Americans, then it's just going to be a muddle. So I think that's the real challenge for Democrats right now.
So the reason why we specifically invited you on, Matt, is because you recently held a retreat in Virginia where you invited moderate Democrats to try to figure out what's wrong with the Democratic Party and how to fix it. Here's what Politico wrote about that retreat. Quote, the retreat's conversation centered on the party's disconnect with the working class. Among the causes of that detachment, weak messaging and communication, failure to prioritize economic concerns, overemphasis on identity politics, allowing the far left to define the party, and attachment to unpopular institutions such as academia, media, and government bureaucracy. I mean, those sound like all good suggestions for what's wrong with the party and maybe paint a way forward for how to fix it. But judging on what we see coming from the Democrats, they're not listening.
Well, not yet. I mean, the retreat was just a couple of weeks ago, and we got a long time to figure this all out. When you're out of power, as we are now, you're a party without a leader. I think Republicans found themselves in that position during the Biden years, at least for a time, until they had their presidential nominating process. And right now, that's where we are. So there's going to be a lot of debate inside the Democratic Party. We are a big, broad coalition that includes people all the way on the far left and people on the center left, even now the center right. So there is a lot of debate about this. But our view as moderates is that we are being defined by some of the radical voices in our party in ways that are incredibly unhelpful and don't point a path towards victory. So we've got to turn that around before 2026 if we're going to get back any power and the ability to stop some of the most damaging things that Trump and Musk are doing.
So the retreat came up with 20 solutions for the Democratic Party and how they can try to re-engage with working class voters. Among them, I picked 3 here: embrace patriotism, community, and traditional American imagery. Get out of elite circles and into real communities, e.g. tailgates, gun shows, local restaurants, churches, and own the failures of democratic governance in large cities and commit to improving local government. I mean, that sounds like a recipe for the Democratic Party to become the Republican Party.
I don't think so. I mean, first of all, I'm not even sure what the Republican Party is anymore. It's just a reflection of whatever President Trump thinks and says on a given day. I mean, the Republicans used to be in favor of taking on Russia, and now, as you were just reporting, that's not so much the case. But I do think that it's true that Democrats have become perceived as moving too far to the left. There's just no doubt about that. I mean, the chair of the Harris campaign said that one of the reasons that she lost the election was because voters viewed her as dangerously liberal. I think that's true. And Democrats are going to have to show voters that that's not the case, that most Democrats running in most places are very moderate. They share their values. They understand their lives. And we have work to do to make sure that people understand that.
Matt, great to catch up with you. Thanks for kicking us off this Monday afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Do not attend. Do not attend. Do not attend.
I think that State of the Union speech is going to be a farce. I think it's going to be a MAGA pep rally.
He is an enemy to the United States.
Chanting, do not attend the big speech tomorrow night. All right. So joining me now is Katie Pavlik. And Kevin Walling is also here. You guys, very good to have you here. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for joining us. So, Kevin, what do you think about that suggestion that, do not attend, people shouldn't show up, they should protest the speech tomorrow night?
No, you're elected to be there and to hear out the president and to push back where you disagree. I was on a call this morning with Senator Alyssa Slotkin. She's going to provide the Democrats a response to the president's address tomorrow. She's going to be speaking from a town in Michigan that both President Trump carried and she carried. She won the state that Donald Trump carried, the state of Michigan, a key battleground state for Democrats. That's the message Democrats need to send. We can't just be the party of no against Donald Trump. The government shuts down in 10 days. We've also got to be the constructive party here, the party of adults, and offer an alternative vision. We can't just sit out this address. Let's show up, be the adults in the room, and provide an alternative vision. That's what Alyssa Slotkin is going to do tomorrow night following the president's address, and that's what I would say for Democrats going forward.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi, Katie, doesn't recommend any big sort of showy protests, like, for example, tearing up the speech, which she outlined exactly how she did it, because she said parchment is a little thick. It's kind of hard to get your hands through. Exactly. Yeah. Your thoughts on Nancy, who will be there tomorrow night, we're told.
Well, Nancy Pelosi is a very shrewd and strategic political thinker, and she wants to win. And so I think that her advice is prudent, but it certainly didn't work last time around. So she's learning some lessons and trying to teach her party that the showboating isn't working to gather voters back into the Democratic coalition that they have lost over the course of the past 10 years to Donald Trump. You look at what Democrats are trying to get together in terms of who they are. They have to really figure out how to deal with the far left of their base, which are the same people who continue to say resist. But if you look at the retreat they just had, there was an excellent piece in Politico about the bullet points that they came away with. And it was things like, embracing traditional American symbols, basically the American flag, maybe, not embracing burning it, or, doing things like being tough on crime, not allowing looters and violent criminals to come into the country, first of all, and second of all, to rampage through the cities. And there's also the idea of embracing the fact that a lot of Democrats in these big cities across the country, that their policies have failed and negatively impacted the lives of Americans, and that maybe you shouldn't nationalize those policies. And so they've got a lot to do, but most importantly, they have to be authentic. They're having a difficulty with that, and they have to be for something. Donald Trump is for a lot. He said a lot on the campaign trail that he's following through with. They can list a number of items that they are for the American people and accomplishments. Yeah. And so far, Democrats just seem to be saying we're against all these things without having a coalition around what they're actually for.
The paper that Katie referred to is called Solutions for How Democrats Can Regain the Working Class Trust and Reconnect with Them Culturally. Those people out there. Good idea to connect with them culturally. Let me get a quick thought from you, Kevin, on Tim Walz. He did a long-ranging podcast where he suggested, among other things, that, he'd be open to potentially running in 2028. Here he is talking about what happened in 2024.
I'll acknowledge this. A large number of people did not believe we were fighting for them in the last election. Absolutely. And that's the big disconnect. We were. Our policies are super popular, but they did not believe that. I'm disappointed in our country. We had a supremely qualified leader, a woman of color. It bothers me. Yes, it bothers me.
Is he the guy, Kevin, that you want to see next time around?
We shall see. I think, we've got a pretty good bench. I think it is going to be a governor to Governor Walz's point. We've got, Wes Moore in Maryland, Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Gretchen Whitmer. You got a deep bench of Democrats. I hope they will listen to my friend Katie in terms of being authentic and actually standing for something and campaigning for something. It's going to be a wide open race on the Republican side. You're going to interview, a great candidate on the Republican side in Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
It's a bad choice.
And it's going to be wide open on that side, too. And, the president has said that, J.D. Vance might not be his particular candidate. So it'll be interesting for 2028, certainly.
All right, guys, thank you very much. All the people that you just mentioned could have been in an open primary last summer. Nancy Pelosi wanted that pretty badly. Thank you, guys. Great to have you both here, Martha. Katie and Kevin. Thank you.
Martha. The party of flag-burning pro-Hamas lunatics now wants to rebrand themselves as the party of pro-America country music blasting patriots. Democrats reportedly held a comeback retreat last month to reconsider the party's dumpster fire messaging and ditch the far left once and for all. According to Politico, some of the key takeaways were, quote, embracing patriotism, community, and traditional American imagery, pushing back against far left staffers, and owning the failures of Democrats in large cities. Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel trying to give his party advice on the last one.
Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those three things and your city's going to be fine. We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom.
But the party might be in some big trouble if this serial liar is making a comeback. Tim Walz says he might run for president in 2028 and saying, quote, well, I had a friend tell me, never turn down a job you haven't been offered. If I think I could offer something, I would certainly consider that. All right, I'll start with you, Jessica. Tim Walz, now he isn't known for his, ability to deal with a crisis like Minneapolis. And, he isn't like involved in things that Americans support, like tampons and boys' bathrooms. What do you think he could run on?
Well, I will just put it out here. It's going to be a very crowded field in 2028. I doubt that our nominee will be Tim Walz, but he has a record from running for governor twice in Minnesota that a lot of people would be proud of. I think it's the sixth best state in the country to do business. And there's nothing on the Democratic Party platform for Minnesota about tampons in the bathroom. So I think he would be okay getting up on a debate stage. I'm not sure he would be the choice. I just want to mention that everyone got hot and bothered over the weekend because of this memo that came out of a Third Way meeting, which is a centrist Democratic think tank. And the memo basically said, stop saying crazy stuff. Don't alienate people. There's no reason for it. And the far left lost their minds over it and says, well, we're not going to work with people who think this way and we didn't get invited and blah, blah, blah. That is the correct answer to what happened in 2024. People picked folks that were talking to them like normal people. And you look at the results of the elections, moderate Democrats overperform by 0.5 point to 3.5 points, and far left progressives underperform 0.3 points to 5 points. The Justice Democrats performing the worst out of any cohort on the left. So people really need to stop poo-pooing the way other sides of the party are thinking about things. Just go out, run your race based on the district that you are in.
All right, Jesse. The party that, believes in, what is the reading hour in grammar school to the kids and the transgender and men and women's sport? Yeah, drag queen story hour. I'm sorry, it's not part of my lexicon. Burned down cities after, George Floyd. All of a sudden, they want to be patriotic. How doable is this?
Yeah, they're just trying to trick us by sounding like Republicans. Put on a flag pin, go to a football game, dumb the words down for the rubes. It's not going to work. Being patriotic means you want to gobble up Greenland. And you can't fake that type of patriotism.
No.
You know how I know who a phony person is? When the World Cup comes around. All of a sudden, these so-called men get really into sports. You see them at the bars on a Saturday with beer, and they're yelling all of a sudden. Argentina versus France, calm down, guys. We all know what's going on here. You're trying to impress people that no one cares about. And that's what's wrong with the Democrats. They're always trying to be popular with the wrong crowd, like foreign nations, like the media, like college professors or women. And they always end up sounding like these effeminate snobs who hate America. And everybody doesn't want to be around people like that. That's why the blacks and the Hispanics and all of the young men and all of the unions were like, guys, just get away from us. And they think they can fix this on TikTok. Like, if clicks meant something, then AOC would be their savior. No, Rahm's onto something. It's about classrooms, not bathrooms. If Democrats can focus in on this child safety, child health, child education space and build up from there, they have a real shot.
One of the segments they lost was obviously the working class. Sandra, how do they get them back?
Well, letting people actually fly the American flag outside their home and not condemning them for that, that's a good start. Rahm Emanuel hit on a lot of really important things here. He, as the former mayor of a city that I dearly love, it's a city that is terribly struggling right now. He really hit on something for me when he talked about having to lock up the Walgreens and the CVS store shelves. Everyone in this country has one of these stores near them, and they've been living through this, and they're saying like what have we come to, right? And you have to think about what party people associate that happening. That's letting things happen. That's not holding people accountable. That's lacking law and order. And that's what we saw get a whole lot worse over the past 4+ years. So I think he's onto something. I think if you're going to tell people, though, in these big cities that are struggling the most to embrace safe streets, strong schools, stable finances, you're going to have to shake up leadership and change things a whole lot before you can start to embrace those things and tout them as a party, because things are still a mess out there. So I think this is all going to take time, but perhaps this is the messaging that Democrats need right now.
And, Greg, they want to copy Joe Rogan and they want to copy Donald Trump and now they want to copy patriotism. Any ideas?
Well, yeah, I have to say, I agree with everything Jesse said, but I'm going to say it in a smarter way. The Dems are acting like Republicans. Yeah. They're saying act like Republicans. The key word is act, not be, but act. To your, I hate to say to your point, we need to stop that.
It's hard.
We know Trump is real. Everything is in the moment. It's spontaneous. There is no act. He's not acting. So this is a group telling the rest of the group to pretend to be something else, which means then disowning everything that you were before. Rahm Emanuel is on to something 3-4 years too late. We were talking about the locking up of the drugs. It's like, wow, is this supposed to blow our minds? Did you notice in Walgreens the toothpaste is locked up? Yeah, buddy, we've been talking about it on the 5 for 3 years. Where you been, you ballet dancer? Anyway. We know that 2024 was a blowout. We didn't know how much because we forgot to factor in the natural attrition of the Trump voter in the last 8 years. Some of them died. Some of them were too ill to vote. Trump still crushed it. So that means the contributions by the other identity groups were much larger than people give credit for. A huge, huge defeat for identity politics. So the whole strategy of the Democrats, these demographic boxes, has been crushed. They can't do it anymore. There's no way out because Trump did it. I mean, he's like, who got him in? It wasn't old white guys. You know, the boxes, race, gender, sexual orientation were crushed by one thing: individualism. And the Dems developed through identity politics an allergy to individualism because it was a threat to their strategy, which is voting in blocks. If you see yourself as your own person, you won't be part of a block. Then suddenly you are concerned about the everyday issues that everybody else is concerned about. You don't think as a black person, as a Hispanic person. No, you think as a person. And that gets rid of the ideology. The ideology, which is identity politics, is there. So you don't think about your concerns because your concerns are inferior to the greater goal, which is, of course, the ideology, identity politics.
Okay. I never thought of myself as a white person.
Well, everybody thinks of you that way.
What do you think of yourself
as a guy?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Up next, Boston's whack job woke mayor is doubling down on her praise for a knife-wielding lunatic.